tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from the New York Times with the help of our special guest, VP of Marketing, CMO at VaynerX. Avery, how are you?
I am doing great, Ian. So nice to be here with you wonderful, remarkable people.
Indeed. We are huge fans of VaynerX. We're fans of Gary. We're fans of yours. You have a podcast, 2 podcasts. Our listeners can go check out Marketing for the Now. We're going to get into all that stuff. And of course, the New York Times. So why the heck did you pick the New York Times to talk about today?
So I think you asked me my favorite piece of literature. And one thing that I read religiously every day is the New York Times. And the New York Times is a publisher that I think has evolved in an incredibly interesting way. Growing up, we were a family that always got the physical paper, and like my parents would read it and I would pick up various things. Of course, I liked cartoons, but then as I got older, I liked business headlines. I, of course, loved the fashion section, all of that. And now it's like the first app I check every day, scan the headlines, got to play my games. It's just a publisher that keeps evolving and one that I have been in touch with and physically interacting with for my entire life.
Fantastic. Zooming out to your role as CMO of VaynerX. Boy, what aren't y'all doing? But for our audience, tell us a little bit about VaynerX.
Yeah, so Vayner is a family of companies that build brands for the now. Helmed by the one and only Gary, who you mentioned, Ian, Gary Vaynerchuk, serial entrepreneur, advertising and marketing legend, one of the most followed people on the internet. Gary is an incredible inspiration for our organization of nearly 2,500 people. And really what we do is we make ads. We make ads that make people want to drink soda and sign up for credit cards and a whole lot more. So we have an advertising agency that is based in New York, but we have offices in 15 other places across the world, from Singapore and Miami, 2 offices I opened, to Los Angeles, to London, to Tokyo. The list goes on and on and on. And we help Fortune 500 companies drive relevance and drive business results through the power of marketing.
I love it. Gary is part of my personal journey into this whole world of marketing, because I got out of the military in 2014 and I started reading Gary's work. And I remember reading Jab, 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 Right Hook and being like freaking mind blown. And I wonder how many people start their marketing or like entrepreneurship journey over the past decade plus by just like getting in on Gary's enthusiasm and excitement for whatever is coming for the now and also for what's next.
As someone who's had a front row seat to just the incredible inspiration that Gary is to so many people, I can say at least tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, but I know tens of thousands because we actually have a conference called VCon, and it happened for the last 3 years. This year's getting a year off, and it's really like GaryCon, and the number of people who the most popular, there's so many cool things. Like you could like watch Snoop Dogg talk, or, hear from the top CMOs in the world, or go down a giant slide, or, get a custom hat from Fanatics. Like the list goes on and on and on. But the number one most popular thing to do is the selfie station with Gary, where everyone gets to take a selfie with him. And the first day of VCon, the first year it opened, it was actually at Viking Stadium in Minneapolis. People were racing down the stairs, and I was like, oh my God, I hope no one falls or trips, or like, what are they running? Is it for something free? And it was to get in line to take selfies with Gary. And just seeing how many people came up to him and told me, you changed my life. I was in a dark place or was in a great place. And, I've had the courage to do X, Y, Z because of you. It is truly, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now. It is truly inspiring, incredible. And that's just the people who could get to Minneapolis. So that was 10,000. I'm sure it's hundreds of thousands or maybe millions.
I mean, it's got to be millions. I don't know how many. Just people have bought his books over the years, alone. So Jab, Jab, Jab came out in 2013. So I think I read it like probably September or August 2014. I actually read it. And I think one of the things that I think is so interesting about Gary and about sort of what you all are sort of able to do with having someone of that status, and I want to hear sort of how you think about it, but it's just the ability to sort of like simplify things into these little talking points and being so simple with the way that he looks at things and sharing those publicly. And like, that's just such a mark of a great author and creator, right?
And communicator.
And communicator, right? And it's like having that is like so important. And I always think of Gary, and I always think of him trying to buy the New York Jets as like this thing that when I read that, I remember like, watching his stuff early days and just thinking like, this guy's kind of crazy. Like, there's no way he's going to be able to buy the New York Jets. Like, that's a crazy goal. And I think that that's like one of those things that like is memorable and interesting and weird about him, and that makes him sort of magnetic in that way, where it's like he has dreams and ambitions too that he's shared publicly, and like that is very, that he's sort of opening up the curtain for you in a way as an audience that just like so many people, especially like a decade ago, like were pretty reserved. So yeah, anyways.
I completely agree. And I mean, Gary's been my direct manager for the last 6 years. And that type of like big, audacious goal setting doesn't just apply to the New York Jets. It applies to Gary thinks we can do anything. And most of the time we actually get it done, which is good. He'll just say things that seem crazy that are like, oh my, how could we do that in whatever, 3 months, in 3 days, and whatever it is. And then we figure it out. And when you realize like we almost always figure it out, then everyone has the confidence to go and do things that seem impossible. Even in our little world of advertising, we're the only independent agency that's not part of a holding company that's anywhere near our shape and size, with a sort of single founder owner. We really do things our way. There's like the industry way, and there's the Vayner way. We're, in the industry, but we're not of the industry. And there's so many examples of things that we've done just in the last 8 years that I've been at Vayner that everyone has been like, you all are insane. That's not going to work. And it works.
So how do you use him as the CMO? Like, how does that, factor into your marketing strategy and for other, leader, or for other CMOs who have maybe a similar CEO and she or he is sort of has a stature, has, some sort of gravitas that they can't necessarily unlock. Obviously, Gary has unlocked a lot of it, but it's a huge value for you. And of course, his name is in the name of the company. So they're inseparable in some ways.
Yeah, I think broadly, just speaking purely like on a marketing plan, right? Like Gary is our distinctive asset. Like the agency is named after him. His philosophy and belief system is really core to who we are as Vayner. But, VaynerX is 2,499 other people besides Gary. So we need to tell their stories too. I think Gary is really that inspiration and the tip of the spear, and a lot of the way that we use him for communication is really what's coming next, because he's such a forward thinker, oftentimes more forward than our clients are even comfortable with. So there's plenty of stuff that we're doing day to day that's like all well and good. And we, want to keep Gary for being that distinctive asset where we communicate his points of views and cascade them through the organization. And I'll also say, so I opened our offices in Asia. It depends market to market. North America is our largest market from a revenue standpoint, but internationally in APAC, for example, we have over 600 employees. It's very different to walk into a pitch in Tokyo or in Bangkok where they're not familiar with Gary. So while Gary is the inspiration for the agency and our point of view, we can't only rely on his celebrity. We need to be able to stand on our own merit. We have our perspective as VaynerMedia, who we are, what we do everywhere across the world. We have great strategy, great creative, great media executions, and great analytics and production and influencer and so many other things. So we really use him as that kind of tip of the spear, specifically focused on what's kind of coming next and tapping into him on the most important topics. Not every topic, because he has so many things going on. He can't be everywhere. The reality is, everyone else has to be able to do their job. And we need to be able to communicate the people who are going to be working day to day on clients' accounts, who might be, a VP who's has 2 kids and this is her point of view, or it might be a creative director in LA who has this point of view. So as Vayner, we want to use Gary as really that kind of tip of the spear, but share everyone's stories because we're such a diverse organization doing so many cool things. There's a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, that's amazing. Meredith, what the heck is the New York Times?
So I love looking into the background of every topic that we cover. And this has a long storied history. So New York Times has been around since 1851. So long time. It was started by 2 journalists from the New York Tribune. These 2 guys, Henry Jarvis Raymond and George Jones. They wanted to create an affordable daily newspaper that aimed to be objective versus like sensationalizing stories just to make money. So They had their...
Sound familiar?
Yeah.
They haven't changed much. Except affordable. I don't know. Their prices keep going up.
Yeah. And speaking of that, they were just a penny copy. So they were called a penny paper. Yeah. And their focus was providing news stories that had actual like journalistic rigor behind them. And their targeted audience was these, intellectual, cultured people who wanted real news as quick as they could get it, right? And so their first real breakout story or formative story actually came like 20 years later in 1871. And they had exposed corruption in the New York City government. This guy, I'll get into the details, but it doesn't really matter, but it's just interesting. This guy, William, his nickname was Boss Tweed. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever heard of Boss Tweed.
I have heard, yes.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah, he was leader of the Democratic Party, and he and they called them cronies in the articles that I was reading about him, his sort of like underlings. They were called the Tweed Ring, and they stole millions of dollars from the city, and they did a bunch of other nefarious things. But basically, like Boss Tweed took over the Democratic Party in New York City. And so, meanwhile, New York Times was reporting on it, and they were approached by the comptroller. Basically, like the city offered George Jones, one of the founders, $5 million in 1870s money, which would be about $131 million today.
Pretty good.
That's pretty good. That's a good offer. They were like, please stop publishing these stories about Boss Tweed. And Jones declined. He gave up $131 million in today's money just to stand on business. Is that what the kids say?
Standing on business.
Standing on business. And so they kept reporting on it, and it ended up leading to Boss Tweed being tried and convicted. And so they're really putting their foot down on what they stand for, what kind of reporting they do, which I thought was really amazing. The paper ended up being bought by this guy, Adolph S. Ochs, in 1896. And he was the one who developed the slogan that still stands today, all the news that's fit to print. So you still see that on the paper copies. I think it's on their website too. But Ochs said that his aim was to give the news impartially, without fear or favor, in concise and attractive form, in language that is parliamentary in good society, and give it as early, if not earlier, than it can be learned through any other reliable medium. So basically sort of recommitting to that early mission of, impartial news, giving it as soon as they can, and making sure that it is meant for their intellectual reader. And even that said, it's sort of not rebranded, but it's shifted over time. It was initially considered a Republican news outlet, and then they ended up endorsing Grover Cleveland for president in 1884.
I remember that.
That was probably the hot tea at the time.
That's right.
So hot. And then in 1980, it did become a national paper. And then in 1996, it became an online news source. Now there are over 11 million digital subscribers, and then only 580,000 print subscribers. And as someone who checks the site every morning, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, is what makes for something that works itself into your daily routine to the point where you're first thing in the morning, I'm going to check New York Times. What do you think makes for content that people build into not just their go-to, but their daily routine every day?
I do think gamification plays a huge role here. So there's the thing that you look forward to when you wake up, which we were just talking about, cold brew, always. So that's almost part of your routine is okay, I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to scan, with the latest on my phone, see what changed in the world today. I think for me, the New York Times integration with their incredible games has really helped drive up that frequency, because maybe that like on the weekends, I'll read for like 45 minutes or something like that. On an average Tuesday, maybe I only have 7 minutes and I'm kind of scanning the headlines. To me, the credibility of the New York Times is why I want to check there first and understand their point of view. What are the big stories of today? And then I really like playing the connections game. So that helps drive up that gamification. I play with my friends. Everybody shares their scores. Like you always want to get purple first. And I think that really drives up that frequency and user adoption and, makes the New York Times even more relevant, not just for me, but for probably several million of those 11 million Americans who are digital subscribers.
I would not pay for the New York Times. I pay for The Athletic though.
Exactly. See, everybody's got their thing. And actually, one of my very good friends is a reporter at the New York Times. She's an incredible woman, Rachel Abrams. She has won Pulitzer Prizes and all kinds of cool, crazy shit that is much cooler than me. And she actually sometimes hosts the Daily with Michael Barbaro now. So that's another thing. So I was always listening to Michael and some of the other journalists that they have on there. But since Rachel got on, now I've got to definitely listen and see what she said and text her, good job. And I liked what you said here because she's such an incredible investigative journalist. And now I have this personal connection to her. So humble brag, I had to throw that in this podcast, but shout out to Rachel because that also makes me love the New York Times even more. Like hearing her stories of just like investigative journalism is the same standing on business that you were talking about centuries ago is what they have to do today. They are bribed and all of these things. And I think people think that journalism is an easy job, but it is not.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy hard. Yeah, and the reason why I say that is like, people sort of like put their money and their subscriptions into certain things. And the reason why I would say is sort of like the reason why I would not forever, but just like would not in this exact moment is because I don't have that personal connection that you're just talking about. And I do have a personal connection to The Athletic because there's a couple writers for The Athletic that I love and I want to support their work. And like that to me is like a hugely transformative sort of difference in this like new modern media landscape why I think it was so brilliant that they bought The Athletic for that reason is journalists who cover teams on a beat was actually going away and The Athletic like tripled down on it and the best coverage that sort of comes out of that. So anyways, the point being is like you have your friend there, you also like the puzzles, you also, this is where you get your news every morning. You have multiple different touch points into this thing. And now all of a sudden, they have you. Whereas for me, I have one singular deeper hook into it. And that's how, they have me. And I think that like that sort of tapestry of having a brand that can do all those different things is like so important for other companies to think about how they
so valuable.
How they approach
cooking is another
strategy.
huge topic and huge driver of subscriptions. I don't cook, and I also I don't read The Athletic, but people come to the New York Times for those things as well. And I think that that's a perfect illustration of why there's such a modern media conglomerate that's continuing to win with consumers in a world where, you just mentioned the print subscribers, like print's dying. Sure, you see them at hotels now and then, but most people just, are engaging digitally in their media consumption. And New York Times has somehow managed to be more relevant than ever.
Yeah, I mean, 11 million digital subscribers is fascinating, but also like how many, that I assume that number is paid subscribers. How many subscribers do they have on the Daily? How many subscribers do they have?
Well, there's a free version with ads, which is also super smart, right? Because people want to listen to it and then they run their ads and perfect.
Yeah. I think that the diversification of that, but the ability to sort of like hone in on individuals as part of the strategy, not just the broad higher level, corporate global news is, I think, so important to sort of like double tap on, because without it, you really sacrifice how the algorithms want things to work, right? Like they want individuals to publish. And like, if you've ever run a big account, which you literally do, like I ran an account for a media company where we had, 10 different shows, but the main account, like if you're posting a show that's about technology and you're posting or a clip from a show that's about marketing, there's so little audience crossover between those two things that primary like main account is kind of always just saying nothing to nobody. You know what I mean? It's like the consolidation. So where you get all of the value is by all of the different journalists and the different people that are working there, pushing out their individual stuff to their own audiences, of which that's extremely valuable on social channels, which are free.
Absolutely. And I think, in the world of journalists, it used to be almost like frowned upon or like questionable to have a Twitter handle or to have a social handle. And now, just like what you said about the athletic journalists, so many people are subscribing to various publications because they want to support those journalists. And how are they seeing the journalists? Yes, it's their long form pieces. It's also their tweets. It's also their social commentary on various matters that I think also help really drive up the value of that individual journalist. If you think about Gary as a publisher of sorts, right, imagine his audience is like 20 million people, which is, it's not monetized through any form of content creation, though everyone always tries. It's, people will often comment, you're getting so much value for free and this is awesome. But then there are these right hooks, whether they're books or they're conferences or they're other opportunities to engage in a deeper way for a fee.
Yeah, there's something that's nice as a consumer in these days that that your money is supporting someone's livelihood. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's why Substack and Patreon and all these things are have popped up. But there is a huge power in the network, right? And the network is the multiple different touch points where it's if the New York Times pays a journalist or whoever it is, and that's the only place where you can get their work, and that thing is paywalled or maybe mostly paywalled or whatever it is,
right?
Then all of a sudden, you say, hey, yeah, your money is going to a big corporation, quote unquote, in the New York Times. But also, if you subscribe because of me, then that is really valuable. And so again, that's how they stayed, in my opinion. That is part of the reason that they stayed relevant, right? Is they have these massive tentpole properties like The Daily and different things like that. But they're not the home of breaking news. You know what I mean?
It's more like the Sunday Times, The Daily, things like that are more a little bit editorial, if you will.
For sure. And and I think that's sort of quite a bit further from the stance that they made, 100 years ago, which is there's the quality piece, but it's not trying to beat everybody else, right? But they are responding extremely quickly because they built all of the different vehicles that allow them to respond quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I also feel that in this sort of new digital first world and economy, it's very hard to compete with breaking news on TikTok because any single individual who sees something happening, whether that's a natural disaster or that's something amazing, has their smartphone and can publish it, right? When all the news is fit to print came out, you actually needed to have access to a printing press and a distribution vehicle. And there were so many more steps into communication, right? You could tell your neighbors about something, but you could not tell millions of people about it at one go. So I think now just that breaking news piece, news does break on social channels because as things happen, people post it, people share it in a way that I don't think any publisher has time to properly diligence, which, I think is also partially their stance. I need to look further into it, but I know that they need to fact check things versus just someone posted this, it's live.
And I think there's just so many more independent, this is sort of you get back to the utility of the breaking news, right? Is you take whatever, a soccer signing, right? Mm-hmm. It's oh, this person is in advanced talks with this club for a signing.
Right.
The thing is, what was important for the papers back in the day was getting it right? You wanted to be first and you wanted to be right. Whereas now, you don't really need to be right at all because it's a rumor. So it's going to happen whether it does or doesn't happen, whether that person gets signed or doesn't. The thing that the audience likes is engaging with the rumor. So that's the fun of the audience. So we're not starved for news in the way that you were in 1935. So we know we're going to get the right answer eventually. What we want to do is have fun with the rumor. And so that's where you can get to the content machine, which is, oh, this person reported on this.
Right.
Or this person literally made something up, but then it fuels all the podcast cycles to say oh, should LeBron James consider going to the Warriors? Because it was a total fake rumor. And what the fans enjoy is that part of it, is hearing their podcast of choice talking about this thing that may or may not exist, because that's the fun part of sports, or that's the fun part of, covering or following politics or whatever it is your topic is. And like, that's where you get to like a very user-centric version of media, delivering it to people in real time as fast as is like able, and like letting the rest of the people sort of, you get there and you go, I want to hear what the Daily says about this thing.
Yeah. I think that's amazing in places like sports or fashion or culture. We don't need to get into this fully on this podcast, but when it comes to news and facts, like this has been a big debate over the last few years in our country, is like, how important is it to be factual, like credibility, fact checking, which has now been removed from several social platforms. So it's a very interesting time to be thinking of like factfulness. And I think the New York Times and others in their category do a nice job of fully checking different things. But now just even clear facts are being debated because you hear one thing in one place and one thing on another. So it's an interesting time to be in journalism for sure.
Yeah, and the reason why I sort of like, I get at that piece is like, those are two different utilities. Like,
yes,
being right is a different utility than being first. So like, why would you try to be the one to be first when that's not you're not going to win, and B, that's not the utility that people look to you. They look to you to be right. And so like, that's the sort of stuff that I think like, as media sort of changes and all these different things like happen, where it's like, what to me, if I were running like the New York Times, I would say, I'll talk about the sports piece, the athletic piece, which is like, as soon as the game ends, I want the beat writer, after, they go get their stories and that sort of stuff. Then there's a Warriors podcast that does this. They record an episode that night in the arena.
Ooh, that's fun.
And in the arena, after they talk to the players, after they do whatever. That's literally, there's no other podcast that can do that, right? Now, if you're an independent media person, what can you do? Well, you can go live the second, or you could do a live stream during the actual game. That's your own version of that stream. And then you can sort of talk about it after the game. So like, that's, I think that like, and then you could say, well, if you're the New York Times, why don't we do both, right? We have a journalist who's actually on site who will be able to get some of those interesting stories that only they're going to be able to get. But also we're going to have a feed where we could go live the second the game ends to do analysis. And like, that's where this is just like endlessly fun and complex. And one of the things that the New York Times has all of the infrastructure to do that. And that's like how you can win in the future, right? It's like, we already have all the infrastructure to do that. And like, I think about marketing today's day and age to round this into an actual salient point, which is your marketing team designed for speed? Like, do you have the ability to be fast in any way? Or are you like, and like, could you go to just VaynerX and say, hey, we need you to be on call to make really fun ads in case something happens in the zeitgeist. Right. We need you to turn around and make something really quick, because our marketing team can't do that, but that's why we pay you. And like, that stuff is why you go find a really great partner like y'all to say, oh, you have a pulse of the zeitgeist, you have a pulse of the people, and we need you to be fast, and we need you to be great, and we need you to be, something that like, we can't develop that infrastructure in-house to be able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I was just thinking a little bit about what you said around the like speed versus like quality. I think, even the Daily is a good example of something that comes out every day, but even that's not even fast enough. To your point, it's like consumers are seeking like in the moment, real time. And some publishers have really leaned into TikTok for showing some of that stuff. So we'll have to keep our eye on how that evolves.
Well, it's just on that really quick though, like this is where like, I just look at marketing teams like, what do you want your strength to be? And like, what can you be in an age where like, if you have really smart people available to respond to things in real time, like that's a huge advantage. I mean, how many marketing teams do that? I mean,
very
like
few.
On one hand, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, we're going to build these like multi-month campaigns, these massive things where I'm like, I bet you if you just got some really smart people to be able to respond to stuff in real time, or just like, hey, go live as soon as it happens. And if you're in an industry where like being timely matters, right? It's like in B2B tech or whatever, like you don't really have to have a thought on something that afternoon, right?
Yeah. And it's also, you don't need to have a thought on everything. It's like you have a thought on certain things. It's like what matters for you. And as a brand, what matters for your consumers and what they care about. That they might care about the Warriors, right? Let's just say you're Chase Bank. You might care about the Warriors because you sponsor the stadium, right? Like maybe they want to jump in there into that conversation. but maybe they don't want to do that about the New York Jets because why would they? Like, it's kind of, a random thing. So they're picking the right conversations and getting the right response plans in place is such an opportunity for big brands. There is, rightfully so, oftentimes there is an apprehension around turning over the keys to a more junior team or without going through all the series of approvals. Though over the last 8 years I've been at Vayner, every year we gain an inch. It's just like, okay, well, this is happening on TikTok, on every social platform, with or without us. Either we're part of the conversation or we're not. Or when things spiral negatively, oftentimes a lot of clients will call us for help. And it's like, they're talking regardless. Do you want to respond? Do we want to stay out of it? There are appropriately a lot of risk mitigation strategies within large organizations. But as you've seen from following Vayner, we are very much in the agile response time camp in the things that matter. We don't need to say everything about everything either. Like, we pick the things that matter to us and we communicate with speed there.
Yeah. I just think that that's really cool. And I think that because Gary from Jump Street has focused on new technologies, where people are talking, where people are, meeting and conversing and doing those sort of things, that you have just such a clear edge there compared to other agencies who just historically have made good ads too, but but you guys are going to be maniacal in the way that you think about the distribution of that stuff. And I think that that's just historically, it's been perhaps more about the art side than the distribution side.
Yeah. And I think it's because a lot of them come from this legacy world. Like, they were also founded in the 19th century in many cases. This legacy world where television was the dominant method of communication, and it just isn't anymore. It still matters for sure. We have TV on plenty of plans. We still do plenty of commercials, but that's not how most Americans consume their media or their information today. So we need to think first in the way that Americans consume first, and then think about everything else. That's our 2 cents at Vayner, at least.
Yeah, I love that. Do you want to talk puzzles for a second? We talk about gamification. What's better than actual games?
Literally games. Games that also appeal, Meredith, to your point around targeting the intellectual people, the kind of people who are going to like word games, which is nerdy people like me. Yeah. Not everyone, right? Okay, great. Do you like playing Sudoku and doing math or, doing connections and word game puzzles? That's not everyone, but it probably is people who are most likely to subscribe to the New York Times are into playing word games. I'm glad they made that connection and started off something that I think is really swept culture. I'm sure you all have seen the purple, yellow, green, blue, and the cultural phenomenon that has come from that. There's spelling bee, there's several others. And I think the New York Times probably had this and I don't know, we don't work with them directly, but they probably had a strategy of understanding that intellectual in 2025 and what they like to do. And maybe a delightful 1 minute for them per day might be playing a game. And I love that they embedded that into the news app because it drives up the frequency of using the app.
Yeah, that's so smart.
Yeah, I mean, where I just land on this, I think that just a couple of things sort of New York Times related that I think are big marketing takeaways is first of all, it took 20 years for them to even break a big story. So
yes,
when you're sitting there struggling, you're like, man, I've been doing this for 3 months and I haven't got any results. It took them 20 years. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
The second thing, so first New York Times crossword puzzle published February 15, 1942.
Wow.
As a way to provide levity during, the war. And so then it became super popular. So they started publishing in 1950. I think it's just important to think about something like this, which is games have been part of their company for 75 years. And it still took them so long to realize that this is something that they could deliver to their audiences in a way that's more than just the crossword. It's they didn't figure it out forever.
But did they? They probably had other games or things like that I'm just not familiar with till their digital app ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did, but I think the idea of the true sort of full embracing of it is the intersection of the app, right? Once you have the technology, right? Whether it's funny papers or whatever. And I think that the idea that they built that over time and had such a strong sort of culture around the different days of the crossword puzzles and stuff like that, that it all sort of matters. But the idea, I think that then you have this app, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, we could deliver that. And I just think, like, if you go back to the origins of this paper, nor did it say, yeah, we're also just going to offer a little bit of fun. It didn't say that.
I mean, but
so like,
but the levity component of the original crossword, I mean, the crossword is also something I've probably been doing my whole life on Sundays with my family. That, that was like the 20 years ago version of now, right? Like using your pen. Oh no, you have to cross it out. Then use a pencil, blah, blah, blah. And sharing the results. You better not do
it in pen.
Yeah.
You got to do it in pencil. Otherwise don't write too hard.
Yeah,
exactly.
Otherwise, grandpa's going to come in and be like, who already did the crossword?
That's exactly right. And that's such a like family moment, right? Is like doing that together. Oh, who did this? Oh, what do you think? Who remembers this player's name? This is, 7 letters. It's kind of a fun family bonding thing, which I think is also kind of shifted in media consumption, right? Because the paper was something you could physically share. And like someone would read one section, someone would read another. Now we're all just like on our phones, like individually consuming. That's not bad or good. It just is.
And I think it's just interesting that like little experiments like that can become like foundationally important.
Yes.
And that like how many marketers think about creating games? It's like so few, right? But it's like, how hard is it to create like a fun game? It's like it's like a whole business, right? It's a whole industry. So it is really hard. But at the same time, it's like there is something there that I think that, you could test or try or do to add levity. And it doesn't need to be a game, but I just think that's a good takeaway from marketers.
Yeah, add a little something fun. Like at Vayner, we always try to add like a sprinkle of fun to the meetings that we're having. Sometimes it's on very serious topics, but always add a little bit of fun. It makes it stand out. You all clearly seem very fun. You've got a neon sign behind you. You're giving like fun energy and that little dose of levity that I think it brings joy and delight.
Yeah, and I think it does. And I think that like, it's just interesting to me that like, we're this big, serious journalistic paper that is like critical to the importance of America. And also we just have a really fun puzzle.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is like quintessentially the New York Times. Right. It's like, that is part of it. And so I just think that that's like, it's cool that seeped into their DNA. And I think other people might have shied away from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, so many other like publications that used to be in that same consideration in class set, like have not taken on that same like spirit of embracing modernity, whether I don't want to name any names, but like just, we've talked about several different pieces from the gamification to their smart acquisitions to their smart podcast and media diversification strategy. I think all those pieces have worked together to form this tapestry of value, not just for subscribers, but also for shareholders.
Yeah, I mean, the final thing there is just like comic strips and that being, like a huge part of that sort of like levity piece as well, of just trying to make people laugh. And I don't think the New York Times ever printed comics. And I think that that's where like your brand can sort of like meet in the middle at a place that I think is interesting, where you're like, yeah, no, we're for smart people who like puzzles, even if it's a silly little game, like, and again, that just like, that fits. And so, but there's a big difference between that and like reporting on war. They found their niche there. Whatever your marketing team has, there's some way to fit levity into it, I guarantee.
Yeah, Gary talks a lot about the concept of surprise and delight. And that's something that you can do, whether you're a wine store or you're a publisher or you're an advertising agency. Surprise and delight people with little small things that really go the extra mile. That's very much core to what we do at Vayner, whether that's seeding on behalf of brands, product seeding, sending people things. If they're tagging our brands, we send them a little package. Or even for us as the agency, right? Like just do little fun things that say thank you to our clients, delight them a little bit, give them a smile, because it makes work a little bit more fun.
Really does. Avery, final question here. What's your best advice for CMOs trying to figure out their content strategy?
Become a practitioner. I think a lot of C-level executives sort of sit in an ivory tower of supervising. I think in today's day and age, being really hands-on with the craft has never, one, been easier, and two, been more important. We were just talking about how news breaks on TikTok, trends break on TikTok. The world is happening at the palm of your hand, and really understanding how the 6 or 7 major social platforms are driving conversation and business for your company. You've got to know it yourself and not just rely on someone else to tell you.
I love that. Such great advice. Avery, thank you again. We really appreciate it. For our listeners, go check out VaynerX. Go check out Marketing for the Now. And, we continue to watch y'all at the forefront of marketing as we have for the past decade. So thanks again.
Fantastic. I want to say thank you guys for having me on this show. I'm a big fan of what you're doing and what you're building. And I love this little deep dive into the New York Times. This was an absolute pleasure.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.